The key went into the lock so smoothly, like 26 years ago. I didn't touch it. I never did. The handle still stuck a little if I didn't turn it just right. Muscle memory led me forward. A faint scent of cinnamon floated in the hallway, probably from the apple pie I baked last week, subjected. Then I heard high-pitched, strident laughter. They were not Emiliano's. Definitely not mine. They came from the room, those laughs that stop when someone comes in. I turned the corner and I saw Jimena, barefoot, in a pink robe, holding a glass of white wine. 3 women were relaxed on the sectional sofa, surrounded by pastel color palettes and canvases. The carpet under them was not the Oaxacan one. Jimena turned her head slightly, her smile fading in mid-sentence. She didn't flinch. She didn't seem surprised, only slightly annoyed. "Isadora," she said, tucking a lock of hair behind her ear, "you really should let us know beforehand to come. We might be busy." I blinked, still holding the bag with the lentil stew, still warm, that I prepared for Emiliano. For a moment, I thought maybe I had heard wrong. Maybe it was a joke, but her voice was calm, polite enough to seem reasonable, cold enough to make her message clear. Before I could answer, Emiliano appeared from the hallway in a wrinkled sweatshirt, hair unkempt. "Hello, Mom," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "We're just having a small meeting, Jimena's friends from work." He glanced between us, the obvious discomfort on his face. I looked at him, at her, at the room that I once painted yellow when Emiliano was 10 years old. I looked at the walls, now white, the clock that was there replaced, the photo of me and Paloma on the shelf gone. "I brought soup," I said quietly. "Oh, thank you," he replied. "But we ordered food." "Thai." I left the bag on the counter. It made a soft sound, like a full stop. Then I took a step back, nodded once, and headed for the door. I didn't take off my shoes. I didn't offer to stay, and I did not forget the tone of Jimena's voice as I reached for the door handle. I didn't leave right away. Something in me needed a moment to be in that room, to feel how it had changed. I looked around while Jimena returned to her guests, Harambin, her voice now lower, but still charged with control. The room seemed unknown. The embroidered cushions that I had sewn by hand one winter were no longer there. In their place, elegant gray pillows without history. The curtain rods were the same, but the fabric had been replaced by minimalist blinds that obscured the morning light. The house felt colder, not in temperature, but in tone, clean, sterile, uninhabited, but mounted as a stage. Emiliano approached with his hands in his pockets. "She didn't mean it with bad intentions," he muttered, without looking me in the eyes. "She just wants to make sure we aren't taken unprepared." "This is my house, Emiliano," I said in a low voice. "I used to bring you tamales in your lunchbox without warning you." "I know," he replied, almost whispering. "But now it's different. Just temporary, remember? We're still organizing ourselves." That word lingered, loaded with excuses. It had been 10 months, maybe 11. I stopped counting when they painted over the chalkboard wall in the kitchen. I walked toward the dining room. The spice rack was still on the counter, but the jars were rearranged. Cardamom and turmeric relegated to the bottom, in place of sea salt, oregano, basil, Western, acceptable. I opened a drawer, saw the little casseroles I bought at a garage sale in the corner, replaced by modern stoneware tableware. No one asked if I wanted to keep anything. I looked toward the ledge. The frame with the photo of Paloma and me under the jacaranda trees had disappeared. Instead, a digital clock without a face, soulless. I scanned the hallway. The photo of Emiliano in his astronaut costume on Halloween had also vanished. I took a step back, my hands crossed in front of me, trying to decide whether I was imagining things or finally saw clearly. Emiliano followed my gaze. "It's not permanent. We were going to return everything to its place," he said, but he knew they wouldn't. He didn't even believe it himself while saying it. I nodded slightly, more to myself than to him. I once lived here. Now I was on the threshold of someone else's idea of comfort. It all started with a call. Emiliano's voice was tense, polite, rehearsed. He had lost his job at the advertising agency, something about budget cuts. Jimena's job was remote but unstable. The rent of their apartment had gone up again. They just needed a place to stay, he said, until things stabilized. 6 months, maybe less. I didn't hesitate. I offered them the house. It's still your home, Mom, he said quickly, as if the words could hurt. We'll only be occupying a space. I told him I would move in with Amalia. Her guest room hadn't been used for years, and she always said I could stay if I needed. You won't be a burden, he insisted. In fact, I could really use the noise. We laughed about it. That weekend, I packed some suitcases, clothes, my diaries, the old Paloma clock, still working. I left the rest, not because it didn't matter, but because I trusted they would take care of it. Before handing over the keys, I took Jimena around the house. I showed her the trick to open the rear door that was getting stuck if you didn't lift it a little. I pointed at the loose tile in the upstairs bathroom. I told her where I kept the extra lights, in which drawer the warranties were, how the breaker would sometimes trip if you used the microwave and the dryer at the same time. I filled the pantry, labeled the spice jars, filled the freezer with the soups Emiliano liked. I left the internet, electricity, and gas bills in my name. I even paid the property taxes in advance. I didn't mention rent, there was no need to. This wasn't a transaction, it was a blessing. Emiliano hugged me before I left. We'll take good care of everything, he promised. Thanks, Mom. You're amazing. Jimena smiled serenely and polished. It already feels like home, she said. That phrase stayed with me longer than it should. It already feels like home. I thought it meant they felt confident, that I had done the right thing, that Paloma would have approved. At Amelia's, I unpacked in silence. She gave me the largest closet without asking. That first night, she made tomato soup and garlic bread, like when we were girls. I didn't say much, but she didn't insist. We watched a game show with the volume low and subtitles too fast. She fell asleep on the couch before the final round. I stayed up late, looking at the message Emiliano had sent me. Thank you again, Mom. You're the best. And I was. I had been. But I wondered even then if being the best mother meant always giving, especially when no one noticed what it cost. The following week, they moved, and I officially left. At first, it was small things, a message not answered, a longer interval between visits. I attributed it to adaptation, new routines, growing pains. But the next time I went with groceries, my key didn't work. Jimena opened the door, smiled weakly, and said, "Oh, we changed the locks this week for security. Sorry, I forgot to mention it." She didn't offer me a new key. Emiliano was behind, barefoot, drinking coffee. He waved halfway at me and went back to the kitchen. I didn't ask. I didn't want to make things awkward. Instead, I left the bags next to the door and told him the eggs were fresh. That night, I called Amalia. They changed the locks, I said, trying to make it sound funny. I guess I'm now a security risk. She didn't laugh. Did they give you a copy? No, I said. A pause. You asked. I didn't want to make a drama, I said. She sighed, one of those sighs only sisters give you, without saying what I already knew. A week later, I noticed the embroidery was missing. It used to be in the hallway near the linen closet, flowers in deep red thread, sewn by my grandmother when I was barely 20 years old. I brought it from her town in Michoacan after she passed away. It had been in every house I had ever lived in. Now it was gone, without explanation. When I asked Emiliano in passing, he looked up from his phone and said, "Oh, maybe Jimena moved it. She's been reorganizing." He shrugged. "It's probably stored somewhere safe, you know? A safe place." The same phrase he used when I handed over the house. I wanted to ask more. I wanted to say something, but I didn't. I just nodded and sat on the edge of the sofa, where the cushions were firmer than I remembered. Maybe I was exaggerating. Maybe this was part of letting go. Maybe this is what it looked like when a house changed hands. Maybe I hadn't noticed how quickly they stopped asking what I cared about. I spent the next morning making tamales from scratch, not frozen, not fast. Real masa, spiced potatoes folded with care, as my mother taught me. Emiliano called them his good luck charms when he was little. I added a small bottle of mango sauce and wrapped everything in a cloth embroidered with my grandmother's initials, her last gift before her hands gave out. I didn't warn them. The house was mine. At least it had been. I opened the door, and the music hit me first, an upbeat pop song, no lyrics, just bass and bright synthesizers. Jimena was on the floor, barefoot, in a long cardigan splashed with pink paint. Around her, 3 women with glasses of wine chatted about canvas boards. The paint stained the coffee table. One of them was sitting on the rug I bought in Oaxaca, now rolled up and leaning against the wall. Jimena's smile faded as she saw me. "You really should have called," she said, brushing her hair aside. "We're in the middle of something." I looked at the food in my hands, then at the room that once had birthday balloons and scattered puzzle pieces. None of the women greeted me. One avoided my gaze. Another took her phone and stared at it. "Sorry," I said, even though I didn't mean it. Emiliano came in from the kitchen, holding a bottle of mineral water. He stopped when he saw me. "Hi, Mom. Didn't you send a message?" "I brought tamales," I said, offering the bag lightly. "Oh, thanks," he said. "But we just ordered food." "Thai." He said it with a quick smile, as if it was a useful clarification. I hoped something more would follow, an invitation to sit, a gesture, a word that felt like family. But it didn't come. I stepped forward and left the bag carefully on the counter. The sound when placing it was too loud in the room, though no one seemed to notice. "It's okay," I said softly. I turned around and walked out. I didn't take off my shoes. I didn't say goodbye, and I didn't cry. Not at that moment. I drove back to Amelia's in silence, the still warm cloth on my lap, the embroidery in the corner squeezed between my fingers. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed the scene in my head, the music, the paint, the silence, the way Jimena said, "You should have called," like I was a delivery woman instead of the woman who once sang lullabies in that room. At dawn, I opened the bottom drawer of my suitcase, the one I never touched. There was the house folder, mortgage documents, tax receipts, maintenance records. Paloma's letter was still on some sticky notes. I swiped across the labeled tab, title. On the back, in a cover, was a worn-out business card. Martín Flores, Real Estate, Valle de Mexico. He helped us buy the house 26 years ago. He sent us a Christmas card every December until I stopped responding after Paloma passed away. I didn't even know if he was still in business. I called the number. "Martín Flores," he answered. I took a deep breath. "Hello, I'm Isadora Vargas. You helped my husband and me buy our house in Coyoacán years ago." A pause, then warmth in his voice. "Isadora, of course, that beautiful 2-story house on Allende Street. I remember. How are you?" "I want to sell it," I said. Silently, without signs, without visits. "A clean sale, if possible." He didn't ask why. "We'll make it happen," he said. I met him the next day at a cafe near Amelia's house. I carried the folder. He brought the papers. The air smelled of roasted hazelnuts and rain. While I reviewed the forms, my mind wandered. I saw Paloma painting the baby's room sky blue, standing on a stool with a rolling pin in one hand and a recorder in the other. I saw Emiliano at 7, holding birthday balloons, smiling next to a homemade, crooked cake. I saw the backyard where I buried my firstborn's placenta, as my grandmother taught me, to anchor a life. When Martín finished, I had decided. I signed. My signature barely trembled. That night, I walked into Amelia's kitchen and put the folder on her desk. She looked at me but didn't ask. "I need to make space," I told her. She nodded once and moved a vase aside. I arrived just after 10 in the morning on Tuesday. No tamales this time, no groceries, no excuses, just my bag and a manila envelope with the closing documents. I rang the bell. Jimena opened the door in a light robe, her hair wet and tied back. Her phone was in her hand, and she looked at it before looking at me. Her expression shifted from confusion to irritation. "Yes," she asked, as if I were selling something. "I came to tell you the house was sold," I said calmly. "The new owners move in next week. You need to vacate by Friday." She blinked. "I sold it yesterday. Everything is signed. I'll send you the closing details this afternoon." There was a pause, and then she laughed briefly in disbelief. "Are you joking?" She didn't step back or say more, leaving the door open. I followed. Emiliano was at the counter, eating cereal straight from the bowl. He looked up, surprised but not alarmed. "Hi, Mom." "What's wrong?" "Your mom says she sold the house," Jimena said, crossing her arms. He froze, the spoon halfway to his mouth. What's done? He asked. I sold it, I said slowly, letting it sink in. Why would you do this? We didn't even talk, he said. You mean when Jimena told me to notify her before entering my own house? Or when you changed the locks without telling me? Or when you both decided my presence was an annoyance? I said. He opened his mouth, then closed it. You said it was temporary, I continued. You made it clear I wasn't welcome. I'm just respecting that. Jimena stepped forward. We thought we had time. You didn't give us a warning. You didn't give me respect, I said. Not as a mother, not as an owner, not even as a person. Emiliano looked at me then, not as a child seeing his mother, but as a man seeing someone he didn't expect to stand firm. Where are we supposed to go? He asked, more quietly. I don't know, I said. Maybe with the same confidence with which you made me feel like a guest in my own home. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence held all the words we had avoided for a year. I headed for the door. Behind me, Emiliano didn't follow immediately, but he would. I left without raising my voice, without slamming the door, without dramatic farewells, only the weight of something finished. The morning air was fresher, sharper than I remembered, and for the first time, I didn't rush to restrain it. Behind me, I heard the creaking of the door. Emiliano's footsteps reached me. Wait, he called. We can talk, just you and me. I stopped at the front step but didn't turn around. I tried, I said. For a year. He stood next to me, his hands in his pockets, looking down. I didn't think it was so serious, he murmured. You didn't think at all, I replied. He flinched but didn't deny it. We stood there for a few seconds, both knowing this conversation came too late. There was no anger in me, only calm clarity. I never wanted it to be like this, he said. I know, I said. I looked at him. Then keep being my son. He was still the child who cried when I went to night shifts, but I couldn't be the mother of a man who forgot how to see me. I hope you find your way, I said. But I can't be the cost of that anymore. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I didn't wait any longer. I walked to the car, got into the driver's seat, and started the engine. As I drove away, I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. The house faded in the rearview mirror, just a roof and bricks now, without weight, without attraction. When I got to Amelia Street, the pain in my chest had settled into something still. It wasn't joy, it wasn't sadness, just space. I left a banana cake 2 days later, still warm from the oven, without a bow, just a folded note that said, "Welcome to your home." I didn't sign my name. They wouldn't know about the jacarandas or the chalkboard wall. They would never hear Emiliano's laughter echoing in the hallway or see Paloma's mud-filled boots by the door. And that was fine. The house no longer belonged to the memory. I completely moved into Amelia's guest room. I reorganized the books, added a small lamp in the corner, framed the photo of Paloma and me under the ash tree, and put it by the window. She looked younger than I remembered. Most mornings, I walked with Amalia through the quiet streets. At night, we cooked together, noisy, uneven, and good. I returned to writing in my diary, not because I had answers, but because I had space to ask. One afternoon, Amalia brought a second cup from the craft store where she worked. It had a small crack near the handle. I thought you'd like the imperfection, she said. And I did. That night, I served tea in the cracked cup, curled up on the couch, and exhaled without realizing I had been holding my breath. The message arrived late. I miss you. I looked at it for a while, not out of anger, but because I wanted to answer honestly, not out of habit. I miss who I used to be, I wrote. Then I put down my phone. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't check for one before sleeping. The pain that once lodged in my chest like something sharp had softened into something I could carry without bending over. The next morning, I didn't check my phone or prepare. I didn't rehearse kindness or shrink for peace. I sat by the window. I saw the light move on the ground as if it belonged there. For the first time in years, I wasn't needed, and for the first time in longer, that felt like freedom, not failure.